if you can look at the world and you can say, okay, this idea of reenchantment does sort of make sense. This idea that everything has a spiritual identity, it does sort of make sense to me. Then, what are you supposed to do? How does that affect your life? What changes would you make? You wouldn't make any.
Now I'm good. Well, our discussion on prayer kind of comes to mind, like starting there, or you could almost say, stop trying to figure things out.
Well, yeah, and I think it's the same as if you understood this, then you would start taking prayer very, very seriously, because you'd realize that prayer is the thing that's going to change you as a person, and you would take things like the Lord's Supper very, very seriously, because you're understanding, like, not in some kind of like superstitious or mechanistic way, but that this is something that is changing you. And like you would start to see the things that you're doing as being incredibly significant, and instead of defining yourself through ideas, instead of thinking what's important is that you have the understanding. And I think you would even you would be okay with not understanding things. Like I think that's the big one for me, is like, if I understand this is how the world actually works. This is how all of the apostles and the prophets and everybody in the church understood that this is actually the way the world works. Then you would approach the world in a profoundly different way. You would just lose the desire to figure things out.
Yeah.
Because it's like, I don't have to figure things out. Like, I can actually trust God because here's how it works. He'll give me what I need. Like, he's literally feeding me with himself. Like, what more than that could I want?
Yeah.
Right.
I think that this opens up a way of thinking where you can say, everything that I do has some sort of transformative potential on my symbolic identity.
Right.
And here I'm using symbolic very deliberately rather than spiritual or some of the other terms that we've used. But if I say a really nasty word to somebody, then that changes my symbolic identity for the rest of my life, and as long as that person's alive. I mean something different than what I meant before because of this nasty word that I said. And the same thing, if I don't want to focus all on just saying a word, but like if there's something that I can do that demonstrates real care and compassion and hope for somebody's growth, then that also changes who I am. That person is going to view me differently for the rest of our lives because of one action that I've taken. And I'm going to view myself differently for the rest of my life because of one action that I've taken, one action that I haven't taken. And so you see, like, whatever I do has a kind of symbolic significance, and it changes the meaning of my life. And it changes, in both those examples, it's like it changes what it means to that person over there, but like it also changes who I am in my own eyes. If I do something bad, then in my own mind, I become the kind of person that does bad things.
Yeah.
And like this is different than what people say when they talk about morality, where it's like, just do good things. It's best to do good.
Right.
Like, do what you're supposed to do, and you can check off the box that says you did what you were supposed to do.
Right.
But this is more like recognizing in every action there is deep significance. And whatever I do has an influence. Well, you might say, like, whatever I do is serving one kingdom or another.
Right.
And I want to make sure that the things in my life align and direct toward the goodness of God.
Yeah. Well, and just the idea, like, when you think about it that way, that what you do has an influence on your soul, so to speak. Like,
Well, but like also like the whole world.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, go ahead and finish that.
Well,
and then
it's
we'll get
just
to
the,
whole
it's just
world.
the idea of, like, it influences, and we've talked about this before, but it influences what, and David kind of alluded to this earlier, it influences what part of you manifests it to, the world around you. But it's like, kind of along this, are thinking about, people like, we like to say, well, this is what I believe, and things like that. And it's like, well, what do you do? What do you engage in? What do you, what do you take seriously that you engage in? What don't you take seriously? That says a lot about what you actually believe. And it also,
But also like maybe what you represent, maybe your symbolic meaning and your spiritual identity is more important than what you believe.
Well, so where my mind's
Yeah.
going with this is, so you're talking about doing good things and how it transforms you.
In a sense, what I'm talking about, I think, is like reorder your life in a way that aligns with the proper order of things.
Yeah, right, but you can't do this in a performative sense. So like if
Correct.
and this also gets at like the essence of prayer. By the way, essence and substance are both two words used to translate the same Greek word.
Yeah,
So they're for the sake of this discussion, the same word. So if that helps you understand what substance is, also think of essence. Greek word is ousia.
yeah.
So anyway, sorry for that tangent. But if I'm doing things because they're the right thing to do, and that's the reason I'm doing it, that's performative, and it's doing nothing. I mean, it might be doing a little bit.
Well, but, I mean, you could say part of what it is doing is it's establishing yourself as a deceiver.
Yeah, that's true.
Performative means like I'm not doing this out of any good motive, but just because I'm trying to trick everybody else.
Yeah.
Well, that's changing your identity to a hypocrite. And a
Maybe-
deceiver.
Right, but I could be doing the exact same thing with the knowledge that I'm a sinner, and I'm doing the things for the purpose of being transformed by them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Then that's
yeah.
entirely different.
Right.
And so let's apply
Right,
that to
it
prayer.
is, yeah.
Yeah, let's apply that to prayer. Because this is an important thing people miss about prayer, is you don't pray to change God's mind, or you don't pray to get God to do something. That's not what prayer is. You pray to be transformed. Like, that's why you pray. That's what you're doing when you pray. When you go to God to pray, your goal, your outlook, the reason you're doing this is to be transformed, to be changed. And God will lead you in that, and it will actually happen. If
Maybe-
I'm just going to pray for the sake of, well, I'm supposed to pray and I need to keep up this prayer discipline, then it's a burden to you. It's just a discipline. It's not doing what it could be doing.
Mhm.
It's not to say it's nothing, because it's still something.
yeah.
Yeah.
In the same way as doing good deeds for people, even if you're doing, I'm going to the soup kitchen and feeding poor people or donating to charities, in this performative sense. Well, at least that poor person got a meal that day, so like it's still a good thing.
Mhm.
Maybe a way to bridge what John was saying and what you just said, David, is that a person should observe their own behavior and think about why they're doing it
Mhm.
and what's behind it. And at that point, it pretty simply becomes a case of where if you are doing it for the wrong reason, like David just described, then you have to submit that to God.
Yeah,
And-
there's this being and becoming distinction as well. If you're doing it because you are a good person,
Right.
that, that doesn't seem to lead where you want to go. And if you do it in the interest of becoming a good person, then it's a totally different thing.
Yeah, well, this is something you actually encounter a lot in like modern Protestantism, is they'll insist like, well, Paul says that you are a saint.
Mm-hmm.
And in contrast, everybody before modern Protestant says you're becoming a saint. Like the goal of Christianity is becoming. It's not being. It's not, you're saved and now you're a Christian.
Well, and this goes
Like this
back
is-
to the idea of God, Christ saying, no one declares goodness but God.
Right. Yeah, but then it's just this being versus becoming. Like, do you view Christianity as what you are, or do you view Christianity as where
Yeah,
you're
right,
going,
right.
what you're becoming?
Mhm.
And I think what we're suggesting is Christianity is becoming. It's it's movement.
Yeah.
And if
yeah,
you-
go ahead.
If you carry with you the approach your entire life, no matter how old you are, I am becoming, I am continually becoming,
You'll be a saint.
yeah, you'll see, well, I mean, you will see things happen that you never could have accomplished on your own. And,
But it's like that's also like the only path to actually being a saint.
yeah, and I can't rationalize that either.
Yeah, well, I was going to bring back rationality in that as well, because it's in a sense like your rational mind also doesn't really grasp becoming. It grasps things as they are, and you view yourself as what you are, and it's that receptive intellect. It's that nous that can see the world as being in transformation and yourself as being in transformation.
Right.
Yeah.
I hate to break up this conversation, but I'm afraid I'm going to have a massive file that's going to blow up my computer if we keep going.
It's been a long one. Okay, well, if you need to pause it, then go ahead. There are a couple other things I want to get to.
Maybe we could wrap up and then do a part 2.
Okay, part 2 will be a lot shorter.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I don't know if, I guess I better come up with something nice to say to wrap up then.
Yeah.
Because we've covered a lot of ground. Boy, it won't take me that long to finish though.
All right.
Let me just, if I can get through without interruption, then I can just go ahead.
Let's bring it home.
Okay. So a lot of this has been in response to this idea of re-enchantment. Maybe you figure out ways to reorder yourself and reorder your own life so that you're living in harmony with the Tao, or like you're a part of the music of the spheres. I mean, there are just different cultural ways of expressing this idea, but like there's something big and great and some great pattern ordained by God that you want to find your place in it. And then I think also we won't get into this part of it too much. This could be more discussion, but I think there are also ways that you can bring pieces of the world around you into that great harmony as well. You can direct parts of your world to be sacred in the same way. But I'll just keep that vague and abstract for right now because it will take too long to flesh it out.
Right.
And then the other thing that I would want to say in conclusion is that if there's going to be some type of re-enchantment in the world, then the simplest approach is to make the body and blood of Christ be the center of that. That's what's going. I guess in conclusion, I would say the body and blood of Christ is what will save the sinful world. And very specifically, I mean that modern rationalism has fragmented the human soul, and if we're going to be made whole again, it will not be by wishing for an enchanted worldview, by trying to believe in something that we don't actually think it's true. It will be by experiencing firsthand the spiritual transformation of everyday things. And I think the clearest way to experience that is to be baptized. And then following on that, then the clearest way to experience that is in the bread and the cup. And you partake of that body and blood of Christ, you meditate on that, and the enchantment of the world flows out of it into yourself and your own spirit and into everything around you as well. The healing of the nations comes from the sacrament.
That is how you change the world, or how you allow yourself to be used to change the world. Like the process you just described. I know, like modern rationalism will say, you have to make a decision on every single political debate and argument, because that's how you change the world, or that's at least what a lot of people think. And I actually had a good conversation about this very thing with some loved ones of mine here a little while back. Was, that this election is a good example. It's like you have to make a decision between these two guys, and you have to choose one or the other. And it's like, I maintain that you don't. Like, I think I think more change can be effective if I choose to go live radically for Christ instead of making a choice in that arena.
Mm-hmm.
And, what you said there sums it up pretty good, I think.